Welcome to the August 19th, 2025 work session of the Mayor and City Council. The meeting is now called to order. All right, first up, we have the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area request for support, Elizabeth Scott Shadow and Al Martin.
Hello there. Well, so good afternoon, Mayor McIntyre and council members. As you know, I'm Elizabeth Chateau. I'm the Executive Director of the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area, and I'm joined by some of our board members. I have Dan Seddon in the audience, Terrence Moore, and Al Martin is joining me here for the presentation. He's our treasurer. And it's always a delight to share an update on the Heritage Area. And as you know, I'm here to request that you consider a fiscal year 26 appropriation to our nonprofit in the amount of $10,000. That's level funding. Your support at the $10,000 level was critical to our operations last year, and I hope you'll agree that investment is warranted by virtue of the significant return to the people of Hagerstown. We are now in year 3 of a 6-year strategic plan, one that Hagerstown-based entities and individuals helped us craft. And you see us doing that in the middle of the pandemic in the Miller House Garden there. Among our most appreciated services is a range of technical assistance. Our small team is dedicated to helping nonprofits and government entities with content or technical types of expertise, access to resources, provision of toolkits, and even leads to funding sources outside the Heritage Areas program. And here's an example. The neighborhood that is home to American Hall is emerging as an heritage tourism asset where preservation efforts are already revitalizing the neighborhood, but more work is needed. And I'm sure you all know very well, this is an incredibly historic property built in 1883. It was, and continues to be owned by a fraternal lodge for African Americans, was a post for African American veterans of the Civil War, was a school, and it was also associated with local civil rights history. Our technical assistance here is ongoing with letters of support and by directing the team working to preserve the building to several funding sources. The Heritage Area has helped the Masons secure $250,000 for the project, and we continue to undergird their funding pursuits. Most recently, we alerted our American Hall contact to Maryland's recently established Just Communities designation. And the fact that Hagerstown is called out in the foundational documents for this new program, American Hall and other Hagerstown partners may experience priority consideration for certain state revitalization grants because specific neighborhoods, such as the home to American Hall, are recognized as comprising a just community.
And it saves a very historic property that I grew up here and I never realized its history. It's been on Bethel Street for years between North Prospect and Jonathan Street, and just such an appreciated and I just think a cultural resource that will really help us with heritage tourism.
Absolutely. And in instances like this, the partners that we assist do the real work of securing the funds, but our technical assistance helps equip them to meet their financial goals. Another benefit we offer is destination marketing, which we do in collaboration with county tourism organizations. With a grant from the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority and our 3 DMOs, we market heritage tourism opportunities in a variety of ways, including substantial sponsored content advertising with online outlets like Blue Ridge Outdoors, Philly Magazine, and WTOP. And what you see on the screen is an excerpt from a spring 2025 WTOP ad that opened with a focus on the Miller House here in Hagerstown. Hundreds of thousands of impressions are seen with these ads that benefit local communities and spotlight our partners, generating visitation. about $50,000 annually from our budget is dedicated to destination marketing at no cost to the local communities or partner sites that receive the benefit of this investment. Now, perhaps the most compelling benefit we offer is access to grants from the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority, or MHAA. These are grants that no Hagerstown nonprofit or government entity would be eligible for if the heritage area weren't certified as a Maryland heritage area. Since our heritage area was certified in 2006, nearly 20 years ago, we've been able to help Hagerstown-based projects secure nearly $1.2 million in grant awards. And further, each grant dollar must be matched dollar for dollar with non-state investment, which means more investment in Hagerstown, often from businesses, foundations, and even the federal government. And the value of volunteer time and sweat equity counts too. Ultimately, the impact is huge. According to a study by the MHAA, our heritage area's annual impact is $450.2 million in economic contribution. 6,376 jobs supported or sustained, and over $60 million in local and state taxes generated annually. So these are just a few of the projects we made possible just a few weeks ago, July 10th. This award to the Washington County Historical Society was announced, $20,000 to help pre-development work needed to establish a professional curatorial storage and work facility for the treasured legacy that this organization stewards and then makes available to the visiting public. I threw up a few images from their textile collection. This is one of the parts of their collection that should benefit from this. Textiles have very specific environmental needs, and this new facility should be able to provide that. In fiscal year '25, we also saw 2 smaller grants awarded to Hagerstown entities, one to the Hager House to support programming for the 250th anniversary, and one to help with rebranding at the Thomas Kennedy Center. And then I threw in a couple of slides of previous year's projects. The magnificent Clara Barton Memorial, unveiled a year ago, a city asset along the Cultural Arts Trail, made possible by a grant, in part by a grant of $65,000. Speaking of the Cultural Arts Trail, 2 different grants totaling nearly $150,000 supported trail design, Phase 2 trail extension, and wayfinding. And then in one more example, a grant to visit Hagerstown supported aspects of the documentary film, The House on Jonathan Street, that is being seen throughout the nation. Last year in this presentation, I noted that we had just been invited to present a tour as a part of the annual Maryland House and Garden Pilgrimage. On June 7th, we featured Washington County, including locations in Hagerstown City Park. A popular feature was the added value gallery talks by Sarah Hall. You see she and her team shared little mini talks about specific works of art. Hundreds of tour goers came from 10 states contributing to the tourism economy with overnight stays, shopping, dining, and more. And because the program was such a success, we have established a 3-year rotation for these tours and will return to Hagerstown and Washington County in 2028. We've been convening partners from across our 3 counties to catalyze planning for the nation's 250th anniversary and to provide both remote and in-person introductions to resources, especially those we extend through our affiliation with the American Association for State and Local History. I grabbed this little booklet that's been made available to all of our partners here and throughout the heritage area on suggestions for how to go about planning what is really unfolding as a grassroots level celebration commemoration across the country. Another thing we did in February was we were able to give access to something called 250 Con, planned by the same organization, American Association for State and Local History, knowing that few of our local partners would be able to fund participation on their own. We funded a viewing and discussion that helped all of our partners who chose to participate understand that wider context of grassroots planning, but on a national scale for this milestone anniversary. The Heritage Area is launching an exciting event in the name of the 250th, a Geo Tour, which is a specially sanctioned product in the realm of geocaching that's going to bring thousands of people to experience a 3-county orienteering treasure hunt that leads to caches and history lessons that spotlight 250 years of history. You may know that geocachers travel far distances to achieve their goals and complete them to earn prizes. Our Geo Tour is cleverly designed to require at least one overnight stay and to be able to discover all those caches. And we're going to be collecting data about that visitor spending and expect that Hagerstown's tourism economy will benefit over the 5 years, or maybe more than that, that the Geo Tour will be offered. So I want to wrap it up with some numbers for you. Here you see that close to $1.2 million in grant awards have come specifically to Hagerstown. And I give the 2 largest municipalities and the other 2 counties that we serve for contrast here as well.
Frederick and Westminster. Yeah.
Thank you, Frederick and Westminster. Now, so if you look at the dark blue bar, and what you see are close to $400,000 in grants that went directly to the city of Hagerstown for a number of projects over the years. And the larger, lighter blue bar is just projects that benefited Hagerstown in general, not necessarily city of Hagerstown. The next graph, because the fiscal year 26 municipal contribution from Hagerstown isn't determined yet, I didn't include that year in this grant, but it is striking. You look at this, in 19 years, as you've heard, we've generated more than $1.2 million in grants to benefit Hagerstown, but municipal contributions were only provided in 5 of those years, amounting to just under $37,000. So like all 501c3 nonprofit organizations, the Heart of the Civil War needs diverse sources of support to sustain and continue operating. A contribution of $10,000 equates to about 2% of our operating budget. Sustaining operations is essential to our ability to generate that return on investment for the city of Hagerstown. And I thought I'd end with this photo from our annual meeting live at Hub City Vinyl in November. We had the best time highlighting local Washington County talent. We enjoyed the presence of about 200 supporters and stakeholders from across all 3 of our counties. I hope you'll consider joining us in Carroll County on November 4th of this year, and then we'll cycle back to Washington County in 2027. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'd love to answer any questions you may have.
I'll just add quickly that our support comes from state funding with a operating grant. That unfortunately has stayed flat since how long, Liz?
Since 1996.
So that's part of our challenge. So we've been very fortunate to get great support from our 3-county Convention Visitors Bureau or tourism or economic development groups. It's structured differently in both Carroll, Frederick, and Washington counties. The CVB provides our support here in Washington County. And then we've been very fortunate to more recently be getting municipal support from the largest municipalities in each of our 3 counties to help supplement the operating budget.
And quite a few of the smaller municipalities also just voluntarily make contributions, but they're much smaller.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Sorry. So, just to make sure I heard this correctly, have we been recognized for 26 years as a historical area? Is that something that was mentioned earlier by you?
Well, we have, the heritage area has been certified as a heritage area since 2006.
But I will share a story. My first, relationship, I was a city finance director starting in the 80s, but I guess it was when we started the idea of the Arts and Entertainment District. There was a $100,000 grant we got through this funding source to put the little sparkles in the street and to help with the sidewalk widening and to just kind of reimagine that space so that it made it something special to begin attracting new investment in that area. So that was my first experience with this group. And then later being involved with the Clara Barton Memorial and more recently helping a little bit with some technical support for the Masonic Hall up on Bethel Street as well.
And if it helps to know, we do already have commitments of level funding from both Frederick and Westminster.
So we would certainly appreciate your consideration on, including us again in funding from the agency contribution area. I know you have a discretionary pot in that area from looking at the budget.
Councilwoman, you have a question?
Yes, a couple things. The lodge on Bethel Street is definitely very important to that area. So I would like to be kept in the loop with that. The last group that was in there, the last couple Masons that was in there was my father.
Oh.
So it doesn't quite look like this anymore.
Well,
Right
no,
on
no.
Bethel Street, the weeds are definitely taking it over. But not only that, we did in elementary school. We even did homework club in there. So it really, and I've met with Stephen Bachmiller.
Yes.
He's even given me some tremendous history on that. Like, he's a true historian, if you don't know.
Well, I lean on Steve. He heads up an advisory council of ours in Washington County. I lean on him for a lot of my American
Yeah,
Hall
like
information.
he knows a heck of a lot. So my question is, the funding that we already have for that, are you just
So as I said, this is an example of how we help a nonprofit that comes to us. If they initiate, they say, hey, we're looking for some help in this area, another, we do what we can. And so in this case, we were able to help point them in the direction of some potential heritage grants. We were able to supply letters of support, and some of those have come forward with funding, at least $250,000. I think that has almost all been matched. So they're getting closer and closer, but this is kind of a constant give and take. I don't have any authority over that project, but I'm there to help as I can. And Steve honestly is the one who I probably work with the closest on that.
so any money, it's funneled through you, and then you
Some
kind of
money is funneled through me. If it is a grant from the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority,
okay.
that is the money that no entity in Hagerstown can apply for except through the heritage area.
And you have to have a heritage area in your community and be part of an
You
area.
have to be part of an area. You have to have a heritage tourism piece to what you're doing. And then ultimately the money becomes a grant from the state to the recipient. And we're less in the middle at that point. But having this viable heritage area is the thing that makes that $1.2 million that I gave you all spreadsheets about possible. None of that would have come if we weren't a certified heritage area.
And I will tell you, as a governing board member of the group, along with my fellow board members here this evening, we wouldn't be able to do what we do as an organization if not for our small but very capable staff with Liz, who has been with us since the beginning, and just two other staff people that help do all this technical support and training and all the record keeping that's needed to maintain our status as a viable Maryland heritage area. We were very fortunate. Dan Spedden was helpful through Tourism Group on getting our funding at the state level for statewide heritage areas increased from, what was it? It was $3 million a year to $6 million. So that has helped quite a bit, but there still is obviously so much need throughout the whole state. But we're thankful to have this here for Washington, Frederick, and Carroll County, and It has been a great asset, as you can see from the documentation, to providing resources in our community to enhance these resources.
You know, I should say one more thing. Our mini grant round is currently open. So if you all are connected with either a city project or a nonprofit that has a project, these grants are only for non-capital projects, but there's time to work with us, as we just are about to announce our trainings for those grants. So
And the
track me
maximum,
down.
and the maximum on that, Liz, is how much?
The maximum grant for that is $5,000. Because those dollars do have to be matched, it's going to be a $10,000 project. But you can have any portion of that matching dollar can be an in-kind donation, including volunteer time. So that makes it a little more achievable.
And the maximum grant for the state heritage areas is currently 100,000.
For a capital grant, 50,000 for a non-capital.
Anybody else?
Thank you. I look forward to the
Thank you.
updates.
All right, absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. You're quite welcome.
All right, next up, we'll go over a preliminary agenda review for next week's regular session. This one here. Okay, just what it's going to be used for.
Yeah, and the cost isn't in there.
Okay, I got it. First up, we'll have call to order. Invocation would be next, and then we'll have our pledge to the flag. Announcements, rules of procedure effective December 17th, 2024. Use of cell phones during meetings is restricted. All correspondence for distribution to elected officials should be provided to city clerk and should include a copy for the city clerk for inclusion in the official record. Our meeting schedule for September is September 2nd, 2025. No meeting scheduled. September 9th, 2025, work session at 4 p.m. September 16th, 2025, work session at 4 p.m. September 23rd, 2025 is a work session at 4 p.m. And September 30th, 2025 is a regular session at 7 p.m. And we will have appointments for the Hagerstown Housing Authority and the Hagerstown Youth Council. We will have proclamations, Forget Me Not, Washington Goes Purple, and International Dog Day. Then we'll have agenda item citizen comments. Citizen comments on agenda items shall be limited to topics listed for consideration on this agenda and limited to 3 minutes. We'll have our minutes for July 8th, 2025, July 15th, 2025, and July 22nd, 2025. We'll have our consent agenda. Under finance, McQuillan Law Books, Thomas Reuters West, Carroll Stream, Illinois, at $12,257. Under engineering, we'll have pavement markings, Alpha Space Control LLC, Chambersburg, PA, $80,000. The Weller's Alley fence, it's fabrication installation of decorative fence panels along the south side of Weller's Alley to screen the post office yard from view, and that is $100,000. Under fire, we'll have technical rescue support truck 2026 Peterbilt 567, the Pete Store, Hagerstown, Maryland, $225,409. Self-contained breathing apparatus decontamination machine, Atlantic Energy Solutions, Chester, Virginia, $32,456.08. Under information technology, project management for workday conversion, IntelliTime Systems Corporation, Santa Ana, California, $27,675. Under police, we'll have ballistic vests, Angel Armor, Fort Collins, Colorado, $13,374.10. Speed camera charges, Illumint, 5461, Lanham, Maryland, $504,000. Firearms and holsters, Atlantic Tactical, New Cumberland, Pennsylvania, $33,096.25. Annual software maintenance agreement for HPD Police Mobile, Keystone Public Safety Incorporated, Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, $129,633. Ammunition, The Guns Shop, 11537, Vincenttown, New Jersey, $21,252.50. One 2025 Ford Interceptor, all-wheel drive, $45,800. One 2025 Ford Interceptor, all-wheel drive, $48,800. And one Ford Expedition at $63,700. Keystone Ford, Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, which would be a total of $158,300. One 2026 Chevrolet Suburban, $62,994, and one 2026 Chevrolet Tahoe at $109,874 at Hertrick Fleet Services, Milford, Delaware, for a total of $172,868. We'll have recruiting initiatives, Safeguard Recruiting LLC, Salt Lake, Utah, $25,000. Under Public Works, Landscape Grounds Maintenance, Custom Landscape Management Incorporated, Boonesboro, Maryland, $92,055.55. 2026 Transit 350 Cargo Rear-Wheel Drive Low Roof Cargo Van, Keystone Ford, Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, $52,239. A John Deere 320 P-Tier Backhoe, James River Equipment, Baltimore, Maryland, $159,090. A John Deere 2653B Precision Cut Trim and Surrounds Mower to replace Unit 323, Deere and Company, Cary, North Carolina, $46,108.50. Two trucks for parks, 307 and 312, Hertrick Fleet Services Incorporated, Milford, Delaware, $93,958. Under utilities, for water, 3-year SCADA maintenance contract, ABB Incorporated, Warminster, Pennsylvania, $285,950. Hydrant repair parts, Core and Main, Martinsburg, West Virginia, $11,004. Under wastewater, change order number 1 to engineering service for wastewater treatment plant improvement project, Black and Veatch, Gaithersburg, Maryland, $240,000. Preventive maintenance contract for ENR generator, Cummins, Westminster, Maryland, $13,006.22. Pressure regulating valve for DAFT, Hayward Incorporated of Virginia, Glen Allen, Virginia, $11,864.29. And biological nutrient removal mixers, Hills Industrial, Linkwood, Maryland, $29,587.06. There is no unfinished business. New business is approval of a resolution to approve the donation of steam locomotive 202 to Western Maryland Scenic Railroad. Approval of a resolution, approval of parking agreement with the Maryland State Department of Assessments and Taxation. Approval of resolution, approval to enter into a user agreement with Hagerstown Fairgrounds Softball Association Incorporated. Approval of a resolution, approval of a one-call service center agreement with One Call Concepts. Approval of a resolution, U.S. Cellular Collocation Agreement. Approval of a resolution, National Settlement Agreement with Purdue Sackler to benefit the city in connection with litigation against contributors of the opioid addiction crisis. Approval of a resolution, National Settlement Agreement with 8 defendants to benefit the city to, to benefit the city to benefit the, yeah, it's doubled, I'm sorry, in connection with the litigation against contributors of the opioid addiction. Crisis approval of 2 irrigation meters for South Hagerstown High School athletic fields. Approval of potential employee stipends. Approval of agreement with Compass. Acceptance of a grant, Chesapeake Bay Trust. And approval to accept the Entertainment District Security Grant. Then we'll have general citizen comments. A reminder, citizen comments are welcome and shall be limited to 3 minutes. We'll have city administrator comments, mayor and council comments, and then we will adjourn. Okay. Next up, the Choice Neighborhoods Final Transformation Plan. Margie Joe, Rachel Paul, and Sean Griffith. Yeah.
Well, thank you for letting us come before you again and give us some additional updates on. Oh, sorry. Thank you for letting us come before you again to give you some more updates about Choice and what's going on as we enter the home stretch with the planning grant. A little bit of what we're going to talk about today. On the front end, a lot of it's recap, so we'll try to keep it a little bit shorter. And then Sean's got some hot details on the proposed housing plans that he'll go into a little more detail on those. So where are we now? As I said, we're in the home stretch after submission of our draft plan to HUD back in March. Our focus in recent weeks has been on refining the plan for final submission to HUD next month by the 13th, and implementing our early action activity, which Rachel will tell you a little bit more about here in a moment. To refresh everybody, the broader objective of the Choice Neighborhoods program is guided by 3 core goals focused on uplifting housing, people, and neighborhoods. We're currently in the late stages of the planning grant. This is what has allowed the Choice team to develop the transformation plan with input and assistance from our citizens and community partners. If we're successful in obtaining an implementation grant in the future, HUD would require that the funds be directed in the manner that you see there on the bottom right. That's the breakdown of where the money is intended to go. On that note, we're very hopeful for the opportunity to apply, but right now there is some uncertainty around the funding. And in the meantime, our team is working to identify other funding sources so that we can move forward with the plan regardless of what happens at the federal level. Okay.
So in winter of 2024, the Early Action Activity Committee formed. Members worked together to explore ideas based off the feedback received from the community needs assessments. The committee landed on decorative crosswalks at 2 highly trafficked locations within the Choice neighborhood's boundary. The crosswalks will be at Jonathan and Church Street and at Memorial Boulevard and Frederick Street. This picture is showing the design that the committee landed on as well. I know the picture isn't reflective of all 4 parts of each crosswalk, but that will be part of the project, and that should be started and completed later this fall. I put summer in there, but in my mind it's summer until it stops being hot outside. These crosswalks hope to increase pedestrian safety, add art to the neighborhoods, and just be overall a piece of art for everybody to enjoy. And then earlier this year, the draft transformation plan was submitted to HUD for their review. Before we jump into speaking more about the plan, just wanted to address a couple definitions just to make sure everybody's on the same page. The current midpoint area median income for Hagerstown for a family of 4 has been updated to $93,500 per HUD. Affordable housing refers to housing where the occupant pays no more than 30% of their gross income. Workforce housing is housing for households that pay between 60 and 120% of that area median income. And then market rate housing is not subsidized in the market value of housing in the area. Mixed income housing is a housing space that allows for a mix of all those types of housing. And then for the draft plan, it's a compilation of all the data, outreach, community engagement, and committee work and workshops that happened over the last 2 years almost. The plan consists of the 3 strategies and paths forward for implementation. Just to recap some of the strategies for people, housing, and neighborhood. Our people plan focuses on food insecurity, employment opportunities, early childhood care, youth programming, and financial literacy. The neighborhood principles focus on neighborhood services, gathering spaces, public safety programs, pedestrian mobility, and local business support. And our housing principles focus on new housing, changing the narrative of housing within the Choice footprint, design to enhance community and social cohesion, environmental design to promote wellness and safety, and support housing stability as a foundation for economic mobility for families moving forward. The HUD staff reviewed the plan and had comments for us to consider before submitting the final plan. There were some comments about some principles being a little redundant. The plan is over 250 pages long, so that was bound to happen at some point while we were drafting it. We had suggestions for merging some points together, exploring and diving really deep into some of those options like childcare and workforce development and transportation. They told us about their build it and they will come model that they wanted to see a little bit more throughout the plan. But overall, they were really positive comments. And one thing we haven't been able to stop talking about among the choice team was that at the end, they said, you could have submitted this draft plan as a like full final plan and it would have been really good. So we were really happy to hear that and proud of our consultant as well. So we are currently in the middle of working with our consultant to address all of those comments, have everything incorporated into the plan for final submission in September. And I'll pass it off to Sean.
So to jump into the housing piece, one of the first phases we were looking at was the Muller building. We did get a purchase agreement in place with the current owners of the Muller building, and we put in an application with the state of Maryland for tax credits. So the application's in with the state. We received word a few weeks ago that we've met the threshold requirements, which is great. That means we move on to the next step, which is scoring. We're very optimistic because our self-score ranked us very high. And if our self-score holds true, we're pretty confident that we are going to receive the funding that we need to make this the first choice project. So again, we're very optimistic. The state came out a few weeks back and wanted to see the building. They like to go and make sure what you're talking about actually exists and there's something there. Not sure why, but I guess they've had that problem before. They were extremely impressed, very excited about the project. They could see this being one of the staple projects the state could potentially be doing this coming year. Just so you're aware, just a couple notes. The proposal is for 65 units, 1 and 2 bedrooms. There will be 2 elevators in the building, as well as a fitness center and a lot of community space. So we're hopeful to hear back final awards. I'm going to say probably around September, October.
That's Sean, real quick. Can you refresh my memory about income for this property?
So right now, again, just like choice, and we can go back a couple slides, but the one slide I think that Rachel touched on was what a true mixed income community is, which is a mix of affordable, which is subsidized, workforce housing, and just regular market rate. One of the things I want to touch base on here in a slide or two later is that one of the things we are going to be doing is transferring 30 units of subsidy into this building for the affordable side. No, you're welcome. So just very brief, I'm not going to touch on these too long, but I think they're good and they belong in the presentation. The next 2 slides are really just some key points of feedback we heard from the community as we were going into these housing plans. As an example, Frederick Manor, I think they wanted to feel more connected with the downtown corridor, things like that. But these were all points within these next 2 slides that were taken into account as we developed not only our housing plan, but our people and neighborhood plan as well. So moving on, the other key components of our housing plan, aside from the Muller building, is Parkside Homes. Parkside Homes is currently a 39-unit public housing community right there along Wheaton Park, Suman Avenue. We're proposing 82 units within that community, again, mixed income. 39 of those units will be replacement units from the existing ones that are there. The remaining will be the workforce housing tax credit and market rate units. So we are looking to expand the size of that community as part of this plan. The Douglas Court community, which just above that consists of 30 units that we talked about a little earlier about being the replacement units for the Muller building, taking those, transferring that subsidy over to the Muller building. And the ultimate goal is to create home ownership opportunities in that location. This is one of the areas that HUD said they'd like to see a little bit more detail. We haven't quite finalized how that's going to work yet. We'd love to hear any feedback you guys have on what you'd like to see out there. But that is something that once that subsidy transfers over, we can then look to explore, moving that over to the home ownership side. And whether that's new construction, partial demolition, substantial rehab, those are the kind of things I think we really need to explore.
So you're, you're downsizing Douglas Court, as far as the units, and then they will just be considered in the Muller building? Is that
Yes, so those 30 subsidies will be transferred over to the Muller building. The 39 that are in Suman are going to remain at Suman. So all the subsidized units will still be in that same area, but we are increasing with the market rate and the tax credit. Frederick Manor. So as part of HUD's comments and part of realizing that we have a very good chance at moving forward with the Muller building, we decided to take a new approach at Frederick Manor. Originally, Frederick Manor, we were looking to substantially rehab 80 units, kind of on the left side of the screen there. The reason we were doing that is because in order for us to be successful moving forward with the implementation grant, we had to have some sort of housing leverage in place. And the housing leverage is typically seen through tax credit state-funded programs. The reason rehab is much easier is that the 4% are non-competitive. So we could apply for those. If we had a good financial plan in place, we would have been successful and be able to move forward and have that leverage we need. Because we're confident with the Mueller building and using that as our housing leverage for the implementation grant, we decided to relook at Frederick Manor and go into Frederick Manor with all new construction. So this is, let me take a step back. 2 plans are going to be submitted as part of our final plan. This is the first plan. This looks at land that the Housing Authority currently owns and increasing the density out there from 125 units to 190 units. And let me just fast forward to the next one real quick. The second one would increase the density from 125 to 250 units, but that's if we're successful in acquiring additional land around that community. There's been some conversations that have happened. Nothing's been finalized yet. Because of that, we're really hopeful that this plan is the one that we're able to move forward with, but until we have that firm commitment, we wanted a backup plan to be part of our Plan 2 HUD, so we could kind of sway either direction based on the needs. Not to jump ahead, but WRT, our consultant, was out here last Thursday. On Friday, we did take a tour of the Boys and Girls Club because we currently house the Boys and Girls Club out at Frederick Manor, to take a look at their new facility to kind of see, what possibilities we could do out here and kind of replicate what the Boys and Girls Club have already successfully done in their new building. So again, those 2 are kind of up in the air based on, the land acquisition, how that works out. We'll be looking at one of those 2 plans moving forward. This next chart is a working process because, like I said, we are changing gears on Frederick Manor. That's kind of shifted. Our unit counts are changing, so this chart is a little dated. It will be updated within the final plan. We'll make sure you guys get a copy of that. But what this does is gives you a general idea of what the unit breakdowns are going to be by bedroom size, affordable housing, tax credit market rate for each one of those communities, and what we're proposing to be each one of those phases to make that happen. And the RU is replacement units. So those would be, as an example, we have 39 units over on Parkside. When you look at the Parkside community, you should see 39 units there. The Frederick Manor one, again, we do have to make some shifts in, and we'll get this plan out to you after that's done. And the last one is what we're projecting as funding sources for each one of those phases for each one of those communities. The nice thing about the Choice Grant is that it enables us to go after 4% non-competitive tax credits with the state. If we're not successful with the Choice Neighborhood Implementation Grant for whatever reason, whether it's not funded or we're just not successful, more than likely we would have to look at 9% tax credits, which are competitive, to make this process move forward. In addition, we had HUD visit Hagerstown about a month and a half ago, and he wanted to look at our overall portfolio, hear what we're doing with Choice, look at some of our other redevelopments, McCleary Hill, Gateway Crossing, and he gave us a lot of advice on things we can do, not only with the Choice assets, but future repositioning of our public housing units as we move forward with those developments as well. And he did share with us some ways we could look at our current assets, realign some of those to help fund some of this lost Choice funding as well. Probably be a last resort, but there is that option as well.
Okay, so the final plan builds on and refines the draft plan by outlining key details like the proposed income mix and the phasing approach. It also includes the relocation plan, prioritizing current residents for replacement housing. Additionally, plan lays out goals, strategies, and metrics to track progress, timelines, partners, and potential resources to leverage along the way. So Choice team members were on hand last week at the Housing Authority's Community Fair to keep the momentum going, and residents seem excited to stay involved and to continue sharing their ideas. happy to answer any questions you might have.
Have a few. I'll start with the first one. For the design walkway, will the citizens have like an input on the design, or is that just something that you guys are gonna construct?
Actually, the design was based on feedback from the committees,
So they've already put all their input on what they'd like to see.
and they actually designed it.
Oh, nice. And then the second question that I had was regarding Frederick Manor. What are the current amount of units that?
Frederick Manor currently has 125 units.
Okay, so you mentioned something about option two. If we were able to secure more funding and it would increase to 250 units.
Yes.
I wanted to know about acquiring that land. What would be the routes that would take to acquire?
So we've already had some conversations with the current owners of the surrounding land. And some of them, I guess, they just obviously can't say, yes, we'll do it. So they're having some internal conversations to see if it's something they want to move forward with. But those conversations are still occurring.
Thank you.
Not cool.
Do you plan on going back to each community and, so I'm going back to when we had the big meeting in Sumans and we didn't really get the amount of people that we wanted. Do you plan on trying that again to make sure that, I just want to make sure that every resident is aware of what is going to take place. And I don't feel like they are all understanding of it.
So what happens, and this is the case with any of our redevelopments that we do, regardless if it's choice or not choice, is we have one-on-one meetings with each member of the community.
Oh, okay.
Our resident services department schedules a meeting, they go out and meet with each family, explain to them what's going on, and determines what that family would like to see and what is best for that family. As an example, when we were redeveloping Nolan Village and some of those phases moved over to McCleary Hill, some of the residents that we met with wanted to stay in Nolan Village. So we relocated them from a future McCleary Hill unit into Nolan Village. Some of them said, you know what, I'd like a voucher. I'd like to go somewhere else. So vouchers could be issued. Or they may say, I live in Suman, I want to go to Frederick Manor. So we give them a lot of options. We kind of really look and see what's best for the families and have those one-on-one conversations. But we also have a lot of community meetings. Once we say, okay, we're even going to put an application with the state to start funding these or with HUD, we start meeting with the residents at that point as well.
Because I remember when we went to Baltimore and how they expressed to us that couldn't get some of the residents out, and it was like you had to take another route.
Right.
So I just wanted to make sure that they all understand what's gonna occur, what's in the process. So.
Yeah, community meetings are not only a requirement for the housing authority, but they're also a requirement from HUD as well.
Okay.
That's good to know. That's great.
Is there like a priority list, like just in case a lot of the tenants, kind of back to what Councilmember Bell was saying, would suggest to move into the Muller building or the Franklin, like, is there like some kind of structure in place so that we don't have too many applicants wanting to transition their subsidy into that building?
Yeah, so every resident within, as you can see, we're putting a lot more units in that are going to be non-subsidized, non-affordable units. The residents of our properties have first priority, first pick of everything.
Okay.
So they have first say of where they want to go, where they want to stay. And again, a lot of what they want really decides on what the plan is going to look like. So it may change to some degree based on somebody wanting to stay in Steuben and not leave, and we may have to take those kind of things into account and shift gears a little bit.
Thank you.
Also, I know I asked you this the other day, but for those that have never been in the Muller building, can we still set up a tour for that?
Yeah, so we don't technically own it yet, so typically if we've got to get in there, I just give the current owners a heads up and they're okay with it, and yes, we can get in there. Once we acquire the building, that's a different story.
Gotcha.
Anything else?
So on the Frederick Manor proposal, it looks like between the two iterations that the interest would be in possibly acquiring the property which is currently utilized by the Board of Education. So, I mean, I guess for me, my curiosity is one, where would that use be relocated to? And two, and I know the age old, we don't control the schools, but if you're roughly doubling the number of units, you're possibly doubling the number of kids that I assume would be going to Bester.
That is true, yes.
And so I just think that I would at least want some understanding of what that means in terms of those two educational operations that exist within the city, to make sure that, the Board of Ed does have a plan to continue the beneficial programs that are at that current educational location. And two, that the Bester Elementary School has the ability to absorb that additional student capacity, given the number of other developments that are happening, in what I would generally refer to as the south end and sort of dual highway, corridor.
I think everything you just said, there's a lot of the reason why we don't have a firm answer on the 250 or, which direction we're going is, because those are the things that are still being discussed and trying to work through.
Anything else, council?
Well, hopefully next time we're here, we're asking for approval to move forward with the implementation grant application.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we'll have the update of the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad Locomotive 202 donation agreement. Mr. Eric Dyke.
I'll back up.
Hi, how's it going? So we last met about this in July. I brought to you a proposed donation agreement for review. And not going to go through a lot again. Basically, there was two additions the council asked about. The first was asking Western Maryland to set aside $10,000 a year for the 10-year agreement to generate $100,000 should they not complete the train restoration. That money would be used towards relocating the train back to Hagerstown. So I talked to Western Maryland and they agreed to do so. That's been written into the proposal. I'll put the language here in the memo and in the proposal itself. The other item that was asked for was a better or a more detailed timeline. That they did not provide simply because there's too many unknowns. They just don't know until they tear the train apart exactly how long it'll take, because there could be a lot of parts in there that are damaged and need custom built. They just don't know. So I don't have a better timeline for you, but we do have the $10,000 in the agreement. That's the update on it. So.
So I have a couple of comments. The first is, and I want to thank staff for sending me the information, as limited as it is, as it applies to the transfer of the property from the railroad system to the city. And it doesn't appear, at least from the information that was submitted, that there isn't significant formal documentation, of that conveyance process from 72 years ago, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And, folks have indicated that somewhere, in the annals of that process, that utilize the terms such as permanent, and I forget the other term.
Perpetuity.
Yeah, perpetuity. I didn't find either of those terms. I think what I did find interesting is it is on the National Register. And that document actually had a fairly extensive description of the efforts of the individual back in the 80s, to attempt to make the engine run, retrofit parts. And so it was a good read. And we've gotten countless emails in one direction or another, of whether the city is to retain the engine or not. And, for me, there was an email I received, I think it was yesterday or today. Anyway, it basically, to summarize, said, to provide Western Maryland Scenic Railroad the opportunity to try. And so I sort of sat back and said, okay, what are the efforts that we have made over, the term of ownership? We have placed it there. Well, it was placed there for us. We covered it. We put it on the National Register. We sold it at one time. So we've already done that once, right? We've already conveyed it to another party once. That party attempted to make it go. We took it back. And it's been there. It does not have significant capacity for direct patron interaction. It has not, until the past 6 or 8 months, generated what I would conclude to be significant community interest. And I say that, as a person, I lived for 2 years. My first house I bought was on Highland Way, about 3 houses from this part of the park. So I walk every day and would see, it just sort of sits back in the park, and that's the extent. And and over that course of history, over that course of the city's history, as it applies to preservation of our railroad history, we have 2 entities that operate informational entities, the Railroad Museum and so, and for lack of being any more plain, I can recall a time when we were going to build a new stadium, and it was going to be the Roundhouse Museum Stadium, and it's supposed to link to that, right? And then the Roundhouse was gone, and the Hager stop became the apartments in the back of, and so piece by piece, the city has frankly moved beyond that preservation process, and again, until most recently, there has not been given significant thought by the city, the community, and the various parties of the greater Hagerstown community toward the preservation of that particular component of our heritage. And so I kept going back to this gentleman's statement in the email about sort of providing an entity the opportunity, to make something of this, to take it and fix it and put it back in service and do so in a way that allows folks to enjoy it in a way that it has not for decades been enjoyed. And then I have to weigh the alternative to that, which is what is the plan? What is the reasonable plan, the practical plan, if that isn't the case? And for all practical purposes, I think that the end result of that alternative would be where it's at. It would be housed the way it's housed, and it would garner some degree of community interest from the components of the community that are interested in that particular item for some time. And we would possibly be back at this table, well, others would be back at this table, not me, deliberating on the matter, akin to our best efforts for what is it, the gatekeeper's, is that what's called, the gatekeeper's house?
At Fairgrounds?
Yeah.
Gatekeeper's house.
Right, that has no
Yeah.
plumbing, et cetera,
Yes, I know,
you
yeah.
can't walk in it.
Yeah.
Or what's the one that Bob would always bring up that we bought on? Yes, the Alms House, et cetera.
Yep.
And
Which we no longer own.
and we do those things with the best of intentions, without at times, the ability to fabricate the resources, to engage in those efforts. And for me, I guess at the end of the day, I see an entity that has an interest in engaging in those efforts. I still don't have great faith that that will come to fruition, that the money will be raised, that the relocation, would actually occur. But I got stuck on that word of opportunity. And to me, it does sort of present that best practical opportunity before us as it applies to that particular item. And here's the reality. If the majority of this body doesn't want to go in that direction, I think I'm okay with that because of two things. One, I don't have any illusion that it is not going to remain where it's at in the state that it is in perpetuity then, in lieu of that alternative. And so, and two, it's an important item. But we have spent a lot of initial time in this administration when we have a ton of major city matters to get to. So that's my 2 cents on this particular subject.
When I came here in 1999, John Long was still alive and still working on the train. And Parks would help him
I was here.
scoot it forward and scoot it back, and he would tinker with it daily until he got to an age that he just couldn't. The city, meantime, put up in that time frame, or even before it, put up a fence, built a little museum. So there are some train items in there, as you say. Built a pavilion, did some other things around the train, but not necessarily to the train, including buying, I think we have now 6 cabooses. We might have had more. I might have sold a couple.
We had 9.
No, there you go. You know better than I, because I wasn't involved in parks until a few years ago. So you know the history a little bit better than me. But yes, John was the only one I know of that really worked on the train itself. There's been, maybe before that, I don't know. I don't know what the efforts were. But it's a large piece of iron, it's under a roof. And so probably most people thought, well, what do you really have to do to it? But it's gotten to a point now that it needs to be painted and restored, and stuff was rusted and there's pieces missing. And that's why the fence was put up to protect it as best they could. And if you recall, when we brought this to the former body, we had a few options. Do nothing, keep it, try to restore it, or return back to Western Maryland and see if they still had an interest. They'd come to us probably 5 years ago by now, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And the council at the time had no interest. They presented it, and they said, thanks, and that was the end of it. But when the prices came in, and for whatever reason, came in at a very escalated number, after 2 times trying to figure out how to restore this and build a reasonable canopy over it and try and enhance it, it just financially was just out of reach. And so a body of us, not this body, but a group of staff, a large group of staff, said, what are our options? And so one of the options was to save this train. Not that we wanted to give it away, but there was an entity, Western Maryland, that had the ability to restore it. So the train's not scrapped. This train will not be dead. The train will not be gone. If everything works and we agree to send it to Western Maryland, it'll be restored, and other people can restore it or enjoy it for a long, long time. Now, if this body decides not to, then we have to find what the next direction is. And we have to dedicate possibly some money towards it. There are a number of grants that won't work for it because restoring the train and painting it won't meet the criteria. That's why I think they pursued the TAP grant before. They were trying to find other ways that might be able to, but those grants are complicated, but it will cost money. And so you have to start thinking, all right, what kind of money does the city want to put into it? Or are we going to allow another group to raise the funds, or how does that work? But either way, I'm only here presenting the direction in which I was asked to do. But I agree, we've spent a lot of times talking about this. I would be happy to move on to other subjects.
Understand. Anybody else? All right. Well, as this agreement sets, if you don't mind, I'd like to go around the council and ask individually if you want to move forward on a vote next week on this agreement. Councilwoman Anderson?
Do we have to?
Well, that's what I'm asking. Everybody, we've made the adjustments to the agreement now, right? Everybody's, okay. So do we want to move forward with a vote next week on this agreement? No? Councilwoman Bell?
So you're saying a vote if we want to go with what we are presenting today?
Correct. Councilman Asher?
Yeah, I'm ready to vote.
Councilwoman Burnett?
I'm ready to vote.
Okay.
So bring it back next week. Or it'll be on the agenda next week.
I don't know, there's only 4 of us here.
Only 4.
So it's gonna be.
Well, it'll be,
Okay,
it'll
let me-
it'll be in
so
the
let me make
packet.
sure
You can
I
decide.
understand. Are we bringing it back next week to vote on one way or another?
Yeah.
No, to vote on this agreement.
Yeah, but you can vote the agreement up or down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you're going to vote yes on this agreement or no on this agreement.
Okay, so.
Okay,
let's
then
have
I'm
it
ready
on
to
the
vote.
So you're good with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right.
So it'll be in the packet. The information's there, the resolution and motion, so. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Next up, Columbia Gas Access Easement at 441 South Potomac Street, Jim Bender.
Hello, good afternoon. Earlier this summer or the spring, council had several discussions about the potential closure of the Summit Avenue Railroad crossing. And it eventually got to the point where the council voted to allow moving forward with the closure of that crossing, but there were several conditions that were part of that motion. And one of the conditions was that Columbia Gas, who has a facility on Sycamore Street, had expressed concern about access to their property with large trucks. And the council's direction was need to figure out some way to address Columbia Gas's concerns about access. So we have been looking at this with Columbia Gas and with the developer that's involved with this project. And initially, we had thought that we could just make use of the 2 alley right-of-ways, public alley right-of-ways that are there next to the Columbia Gas property. But the more we looked at it, we realized that if you're talking about a tractor trailer trying to get in there, the only way that they could really get into their property, their storage yard, would be to cut across the city-owned property at 441 South Potomac. And in order to do that, we'd have to have an easement there for Columbia Gas, and putting an easement on 441 is going to restrict the use of that property in the future. So what we came up with as a recommendation is an easement that actually would be an extension of the existing alley that's by the community garden. It would allow a tractor trailer to pull in straight and go the whole way back to the fence that surrounds the yard without having to turn, without having to cut across any other properties. So that's what is being proposed, is an easement that would allow Columbia Gas to cut across part of the property that is the Public Works storage yard, at the very northern end of that property, and get them to their property without having to cross any other properties. So that's really what's being proposed here.
I'm good with it. I'm good with it.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, U.S. Cellular request for approval collocation agreement. Nancy Hosrat.
Hi, good evening. This one's pretty simple. In April, I came before Mayor and Council and made a similar request for New Singular to co-locate it's on the tower out at the MAC tank, the city water tank that we refer to as the MAC tank. The original agreement with US Cellular goes back to 2006. Different this time is there was a securities purchase and T-Mobile acquired US Cellular. However, US Cellular will continue to own the Hagerstown North Tower. The request is for T-Mobile from US Cellular to allow T-Mobile to co-locate on the tower. The request is consistent with Section 20 of the lease agreement between the city and US Cellular. I would note in this documentation, US Cellular has incorporated language that gives them the right to redact confidential terms to include financial information with regard to the co-location agreement between US Cellular and T-Mobile. But other than that, for us, it's pretty straightforward. We collect, they do pay rent for that site. They also pay the taxes for that, property taxes for that.
Who pays rent?
US Cellular, it's a lease agreement, and they pay rent to the city of Hagerstown because it's located on our property.
So when T-Mobile comes and puts their stuff, if I'm understanding this right, on US Cellular's tower, right?
Right.
And pays US Cellular an amount of money that they don't want to tell us, we're not going to charge T-Mobile?
They're co-locating on T-Mobile's tower, or on US Cellular's tower. Our lease agreement is strictly with US Cellular.
Right.
And it allows US Cellular to have other companies co-locate, just they have to ask us permission.
I guess here's the weird part that I'm thinking. So let's say I tell somebody, you know what, you can put a shed on my property. And you can come and you can use the shed when you want to get your stuff. And then they say, well, I got a buddy who'd like to put some stuff here too. And he starts putting stuff in the shed. And they say, well, I got another buddy and he wants to put some stuff. And now I've got multiple people using multiple vehicles on regular, multiple occasions. You know what I mean? Under a single agreement that I started with a singular person. On that project, just seems odd to me. Like, in other words, I don't know that we do that. So let's take our telephone poles. On our telephone poles, do we have just City Light on them?
No.
We have other entities. Do we charge each entity that gets on our telephone pole?
Yes.
So I just feel like we would charge each entity that would put a tower location facility on our property.
We can go back to them and discuss
Because-
it. We just,
It
for
sounds like what they're
this,
doing is they're getting use of the tower for free because US Cellular is keeping ownership, but they're getting paid.
US Cellular. and
Yeah, they're basically buying US Cellular out. US Cellular is
Right.
going to hold the tower so that we don't charge another third party money to be there.
yeah. And
That, I guess to me, that just doesn't make sense.
we can,
Yeah, I thought for the
We can go
HPD,
back.
like we charge each user like X amount.
yeah, this one, this particular lease agreement is strictly with US Cellular, so we get a lease payment from US Cellular. And this is,
And if US Cellular's, the way I read this is US Cellular's telecommunications, right? Now what it says is getting bought out by T-Mobile.
yeah, and
But
I-
they're going to stay the owner of the infrastructure.
of
so
this
is T-Mobile-
particular tower anyway.
But is T-Mobile bringing infrastructure and adding it to the tower? Or are they just buying what's there?
No, they're going to co-locate, which means T-Mobile, just like we did in April, New Singular, actually, equipment was installed on the tower for New Singular. This request is so that equipment can be installed on the tower specific to T-Mobile. US Cellular is going to continue to, even though they've been acquired by T-Mobile, US Cellular is going to continue to own this site.
Sprint did the same thing with Cell One back probably 15 years ago on, I'm pretty sure it's HPD's tower.
Yeah, and there was something recently
There was
with
COLA.
Chantel as well. And, you know, I had, of course, anything like this, legal counsel reviews it, and legal counsel did want us to point out that specific sentence in the letter that says, USCC has the right to redact financial and other confidential terms with this lease. The lease they're referring to is the lease between T-Mobile and US Cellular.
right.
Not the lease between the city and US.
I get that. What I'm saying is US Cellular saying, you know what, city, we're not going to tell you, but we're getting paid. So that you don't look at that and go, well, why aren't we getting part?
We'll go back, instead of, we'll pull this from the agenda next week, and I'll have Jason Morton was working with US Cellular. And like I said, he wanted us specifically to make this body aware of that sentence. So we'll go back and revisit it.
Maybe see what Cheney has for HPD's tower.
Okay.
Because there were 3 on that tower. Chantel, US Cellular, and Cell One.
And I thought it was like $5,000 every time somebody added. I could be wrong,
But, I mean, it's been, I haven't looked at that in so long.
but I feel like that was the
But,
number.
Is there any language in their contract that says that they can't like subsell or sublease?
There's language in their contract that allows for co-location, but it must be approved by this body.
Right.
So we have to approve it. So we can say, under this condition, you know, we don't have,
Or at
it's
least a
not a.
percentage of it,
Yeah.
percentage of the cost.
So it does allow them to, but it must be approved by this body. All right, we'll take it off the agenda for next week, and we'll come back with more information.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you.
We probably have 5 towers, city-owned towers that have cell service on them. Fairgrounds, the big flagpole is a huge
Right.
cell tower. Out off of Burhan's and Sherman, behind where there's a truck repair area back in there, up on the old dump ground on Frederick Street, HPD, and then this one. So we've got several.
We sold the other one.
This was the newest one. Yes, and the dump.
All right, we got Michelle Hepburn for the FY '26
anxious.
potential employee stipends, transition to bi-weekly pay cycle.
Good afternoon, good evening, I guess I should say. Wait. So this evening, I'm here many months ago. I can't remember if it was this, I think it was this administrative body. I think it was January. Seems like forever ago. Heard the presentation, and we are moving away from our current legacy. I don't want to just call it a financial system, but our computer system, right? That we all utilize across the areas. And as we are starting to do this implementation, it has really become even more apparent of the necessity and why we need to convert from paying weekly, which we have done historically at the city, to biweekly. And there's a ton of business reasons why, right? To pay weekly is tremendously administratively a burden, and most organizations our size with our employee base do not do that. So also acknowledging that to make this conversion happen, that we would not convert and transition from weekly to biweekly until we actually implement the new computer system. We don't have a definitive date. That's something that we've been going back and forth with project managers and Workday project managers. It is anticipated to happen first quarter of calendar 2026. And so would like to propose that we offer a stipend to the employees because, again, become accustomed to budgeting their monies on a weekly. They've got items and automatic payments set up. And if we look to do a stipend, we could actually monitor it in a way that was suggested, and that is to pay the equivalent of 20 hours of every individual's base pay. So that means each individual would get a different amount based on their base pay. Again, we want it to be a stipend and a one-time payment because we don't want to be touching things like annual salary tables that are already approved in the new union contracts. We don't want this to be recurring, and with a one-time payment, we could utilize fund balance reserves as the funding source. And again, if we're willing to do that, I would like to go ahead and have a motion included in next week's packet to provide a stipend. And it would be for any active employee, full-time, part-time, or seasonal, at the time that we implement. So if it is January, most of the time, we have no seasonal staff left as active employees in January, so they would not be included. So let's say we're in our current system, we're in Munis, we get paid this Friday. Next Friday would be the first week we go, and this is an example, next Friday would be the first week in workday. That would be the Friday that we would look to pay the stipend so that it's in that very first off week. And again, would look to do it based at every individual's approximately 20 hours. Is this group okay with providing a stipend and bringing it
good
back
with it.
for a vote?
I'm good with it.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Is there anything in my criteria that I missed? Because we'll process the checks, we'll take out applicable federal and state taxes. That means the city will pay applicable federal portion as well. Thank you very much. We'll be getting communication out shortly to employees to let them know that we are.
All right. Everybody else good with it?
I'm okay with it.
Michelle, you were saying that you don't have an effective date of when we will start yet?
No, right. But if you're okay, we'll leave the motion in. That way you'll take the formal vote next week, right? And either way, what this allows us to do is now we can go ahead and start communication out in advance to all employees, right? This move is coming, projected for first quarter of calendar 2026, so that we have hopefully time to start the budget. And then as the date draws closer, we'll continue to send out communication. But thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to go to our esteemed colleague, Councilmember Tierra Burnett, for her talk on rent stabilization.
Right. I think it's my first time presenting in a work session, so bear with me, y'all.
We're excited.
So I provided a memo that's included in your packet with the subject line as Strategic Plan 2025-2028, Focus Area Number 1, Affordable Housing and Homeless Solutions, Rent Stabilization. Just as a reminder, we did approve our goals, and this is one of the items that I'm bringing forth to the body for further discussion. As I've mentioned before, Maryland has no statewide rent control, but several counties and municipalities have enacted local laws. And in my memo, I go over the jurisdictions in Maryland that has something similar to rent stabilization. And starting with Montgomery County, they adopted a bill 1523 that went in effect last year, and it puts a cap at rental units or CPI units at 3% or 6%. They're also made some changes recently for that rent cap, lowering that number from the max 6% to 5.7%. I believe it starts soon. And it applies to most rentals that's 23 years, greater than 23 years old. And there's some exemptions in their bill for newer buildings less than 23 years and buildings that.
Pull your mic closer.
Oh, you can't. Better?
Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that. Where was that? Some exemptions for other type exemptions for certain property types. And for Prince George's County, they adopted a Permanent Rent Stabilization and Protection Act that went into effect also last year. Their caps were for non-senior housing, lesser of CPI of 3% or 6%, and senior housing, lesser of CPIU 4.5%. This was interesting research because at the time, County Executive Angela Alsobrooks was in favor of this proposal. So it's really cool to see our representatives back in that time talking about some issues that we still know is existing today. Some of the exemptions from the Prince George's County applies to newer builds, post-2000, medical, religious, nonprofit shelters. They have a little bit more longer list of exemptions with their act. Enforcement fines is also included. And then for Tacoma Park, it's one of the only municipality in Maryland with ongoing rent control. They have a cap as well of 2.4%. There's notices involved with a 2-month required, exemptions for single-family rentals, accessory apartments, group homes, affordable housing, new building, et cetera. So all in all, with the other jurisdictions in Maryland, they put some type of cap on how much to charge for rentals. They also put in some exemptions. They also have enforcement notifications, and some of these also have appeal process for landlords to apply. And I also just put right before the meeting out a frequently asked question sheet from the state page titled Renters' Rights and Stabilization Act, HB 693. So this act through state, not through state, but for state-related purposes, goes over, goes over the statewide tenant bill of rights. This act summarizes the tenant's right under state and federal law. It also states that landlords are legally required to attach to every residential lease beginning July 1st, 2025, of this tenant's bill of rights. There's also an Office of Tenant and Landlord Affairs that is written into this act within the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. And this packet goes over some more information about questions and answers, just summarizing here. And some of the key protections from the Tenant Bill of Rights is security deposit cap, limiting to a maximum of 1 month's rent, except in rare circumstances, eviction filing fees, right of first refusal, which gives the tenants will receive notification that they could submit a offer of the property that's being sold that they currently live in. There's also eviction and timing and weather protections, where the act extends the time between an eviction judgment and enforcement and prohibits evictions during extreme weather. Also, tenant remedies, late fees, application fee limits, et cetera. And for the purpose of additional notes for this discussion, as far as the legislation side, the good cause eviction legislation, SB 651, HB 709, was proposed. This would give landlords must provide a legitimate reason for like non-payment or lease violations to evict tenants. That was proposed. And then there's the Tenant Possessions Recovery Act. This was also proposed, SB 442, HB 767, which requires landlords to provide 14 days notice before eviction, offers tenants a 10-day window to reclaim personal belongings before disposing of them. And eviction, another one, eviction prevention and legal aid funding is a budget priority. This would allow for right to counsel for legal assistance for income eligible tenants and eviction prevention programs. So I know that was a lot of information, but I just want to make sure that I capture the best I can. But I want, again, this is a goal to even have this conversation, but I want us to come back to do more of like a work session to evaluate the pros and cons of rent stabilization. And a part of that process to make sure we engage with key stakeholders. Obviously staff, of course, but get landlord input, tenants input, housing advocates, property managers, community organizations to gather feedback on making a well-informed decision if this is something that we want to pursue in the future, but making sure we have enough information to going forward, because other municipalities or jurisdictions have something in place, but what can we do as a local body that we would be comfortable with?
Would you like that done in a work session environment or in a workshop type environment?
Well, I want to get also counsel if,
If you want to pursue it at all.
right, if you want to pursue it at all.
Can I ask you one question before you go on? Those caps, are they adjustable? The reason I ask that is because, I own a property in West Virginia and my taxes went up and my payment is $100 more. So would that take into account, any,
I don't have the answer to that,
Okay.
but I do have I did reach out to Delegate Spiegel, who was involved in the Montgomery County process when they implemented theirs. So I'm waiting to hear back and going to get some more information about how that went down and hopefully have some more answers. But for now, I want this body to at least research on the possibilities, and then we can come back if that's doable. I just don't want it, we did note it as a goal, but I want to put something at least on paper to like start the conversations and get the information and feedback from the stakeholders to make sure that we are taking this into consideration. Because what I do know is that there's rental properties that are charging quite a bit of money for people to stay there. And some of the units haven't been upgraded in a very, very long time, yet their rent is increasing over and over and over, to the point that what we want to see is that people just ain't gonna be able to afford to live. With everything else, everything else increasing, rent is one of them. And to not have an answer for our citizens of to why, I have problems with that. And I know that maybe about like 2 years ago, the previous administration, we did have some rental associations come to the body and give some data of what that looks like. That would be another opportunity for them to come back and share with this body if that's what we want to do, to get their input. But I just can't sit by and just do nothing. So that's why I'm here to present for this.
so you're asking the council if they want to move forward with something like this?
Yes.
All right, you want to go around? You good? Councilman Bell?
I'm good with this, definitely, and I feel like whatever we do, we should put possibly like a call to action to rental agencies and landlords, because even like some of the questions, like I didn't know, like, can a landlord require a tenant to pay first month's rent and in addition to security deposit at the beginning of the lease, and can you charge more for a security deposit? I think the average person doesn't know that. And then I'm wondering, like, do the landlords or the rental agencies know that as well? Because I've seen several property owners double their security deposit for a person to move in. So I feel like even looking at some of the security deposit questions, I think it's important for both entities to be aware of this. So that's what's up.
Yeah, and the tenant's Bill of Rights is new. It's new, and not a lot of people know about it, which is why I wanted to make sure that we at least aware of what's happening, to further educate ourselves and how we can, leverage the tenant Bill of Rights moving forward. Yeah,
So like, for example, to move forward, what is our next step as a body to make sure we can implement rent caps? Like, what does that
Like,
look
I-
like?
I think one
Like,
thing we
how do
could
we
offer-
implement that?
I
to
think what
make
we
sure-
could offer to you would be some additional information on some of, on these three that Councilmember Burnett has provided. Try to find some additional information, pros and cons. And you're definitely going to want to have, I think, members of the Landlord Association and Board of Realtors perhaps, but then also from the other side, you know, renters.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Like, both of them need to
CAC,
be.
you know, potentially CAC, those that provide rental assistance, and get their input as well.
And legal too.
Yeah.
But I know, like, with, at least doing my research with all these jurisdictions, it wasn't a quick decision made. It
No.
was something similar with having many community meetings. And, you know, like with government, you're gonna make some people happy or not, or, you know, so, but at least we'll do our due diligence with getting information that we need in order to make a, again, well-informed decision.
Councilman Alshire?
So I'm happy to have the conversation. I will tell you that, at least on the surface, there are two thoughts that I have, and the first is philosophically, I believe that it is government's responsibility to make sure that housing is safe for individuals to occupy. However, I believe it is the market's opportunity, maybe is that's the best word, to determine what that rate of return is. And I think for me, on that first matter, you know, I am always happy to engage in discussion on ordinances that relate to ensuring that the housing that exists within the city is safe. And that's from, you know, I was a huge proponent, lonely so, when it came to regulating hotels. You know, I was here when we instituted rental registration. I was here for the habitual offender, you know, that you know, addressed tenants, you know, in the rental properties. So, you know, I feel like I've been supportive of the gambit of things that ensure that the housing that exists within the city of Hagerstown is safe for individuals to occupy, and that it is a positive and productive, you know, livable experience. When it comes to setting caps, there are, so that's that second part. I look at the places that you've cited, like Montgomery County. Montgomery County is a very, very expensive place to live, you know, with significant housing demand and cost associations. And I don't know, I don't see that that's the same set of circumstances here. I feel like we have continually initiated ways to improve housing, the quality of housing, the market rate of housing in Hagerstown. And I have so many questions about whether or not any entity looking to engage in the housing market in the city of Hagerstown is going to say, whoa, I'm going to be capped on what I can make on the investment I'm about to make. And then I think about, you know, is government, meaning the city government, going to have to create an entire department to facilitate administering, you know, who's monitoring what's a major improvement, what's not. The whole, if it's more than 23 years old, I mean, that's most of the housing stock we have. And is that going to push potential investors away from the table to say, I'm not even going to touch that stuff, at a time when we're continuing to try and climb that ladder of wanting investment, you know, in housing, and especially the big housing structures in the urban core. I just don't know who's going to regulate that and how that's going to be capped, because I think the mayor made a very good point. Unless we have some city department that's going to sit down and actually look at those numbers with every single investor for every single residential structure they take on, that initiative to buy and fix up for that purpose, you know, they're gonna have to look at every one of those numbers. What are the, you know, because taxes are gonna change, and, you know, utility process is gonna change, et cetera, et cetera. And on the flip of that, the flip side of that coin is the people that have those places now, if we say now you're only capped at this, they're gonna say, well, then I'm not doing anything. You know, I'm just gonna own it and coast. You know what I mean? And so I just look at that other side of that, you know, that second part there and go, somebody would have to have some very, very detailed, you know, information and expectations on how that second part would apply, for me to look at that and say, yeah, I think that's a good, you know, business for the city to be in. And you talk about bringing in like CAC, and, you know, I'm thinking about, you know, the housing authority, you know, or any entity that you know, certifies their rental, provides for Section 8 rental, you know, are they going to have different standards to abide by, because, you know, they're going to have that state and federal process that changes those numbers each year, and so they have that greater flexibility.
Yeah, those are all great points.
Yeah, I'd want to hear from all of those.
Right, which is,
Like,
this is,
interested
again, this
people.
isn't something that we can just snap a finger and
No.
and make the decision on, right? But I do think that we owe our constituents at least a discussion to this topic on what we can do as a local government, and what's feasible, and, you know, doing the groundwork of researching and collaborating and getting information from stakeholders to make a well-informed decision. So it's not like a request, like, we're going to do this right now.
Right, and-
But we should entertain what we put as our goal to further the conversation. That's what my ask of the body is to do.
Well, I think the product at the end of the day may end up being something differently than we sit here and envision in our minds at the
Absolutely.
moment.
Right.
So that's why I
Yeah.
say I'm happy to engage in that discussion.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know from the outset that the one item I wouldn't be able to support is a cap on rentals, because I don't know that I could fairly prescribe that without creating a governmental process to do.
Michelle said she'd do it.
What's that?
Michelle said she'd do it.
But to answer, Scott, your question about like what would that look like, next steps?
Before you get into the next step,
Uh-huh.
I just have a few more questions. Is it possible to, because I hear both sides, and I just need to know, is it possible, has it been brought up before? But I know that we have like a residential rental licensing and inspection program. Of course, this covers landlords, tenants, and things of that nature. Now, being everything that Councilmember Burnett addressed as issues that we have within our city, is there any legal action that we can take that won't jeopardize too much, you know, state level? So for example, Maryland has a state law that they can increase rent within 90 days, right? They have 90 days. Now, do we as a jurisdiction have the power to implement something that says, you know what, we don't want that to be 90 days. We want that to, we don't.
No, we can't make it more.
We
We
can't.
can't supersede
Okay.
state law.
What if, even if we start with the security deposit, you know, knowing that they cannot go more than that first month's, you know, even if we start implementing something that lets them know, okay, we're coming for this. This is where we're going to start. We start the security deposits. It will allow people, especially that most people can't afford to pay a double security first month and a double security deposit. If we start there, then I feel like it will allow people to see you know.
Well, I would think that's where a discussion would need to be had, because for a reaction, there's a reaction. So you've got to, you've got to judge, how much would this affect all of these things? And are you willing to take that legislative risk to do that?
Here's an example of something that I hear from time to time from individuals looking to rent property in the city. And why I mean to say that I'm happy to open to the discussion, because it may end up looking differently than at the end of the day than when you start, once you meet with all of those stakeholders. But I hear from folks from time to time that say, I contacted this entity to rent this property, and I paid these fees to these property management entities to do the background check, et cetera, and they represent 6 or 7 different places. And then the next day, that place was already rented. But they took my $50 fee, and then I got to pay another fee because I want to look at this other place. And, are they just taking my fees because I'm limited in the ability to continue to sort of pay fees on top of fees to keep, getting a background check done when it's, when it was already done. So there's an example, like a real-time example, where I hear from people that say, here's an issue I experience as a renter in the rental process, the rental search process. And so for me, like if those things come out of this discussion, like I feel like there's going to be 50 different things that come out of the discussion. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to sit down and say, okay, which of these items fit for our ability to balance, like you said, the two sides of the equation, that we have to find a fairness to.
But even to go with Councilmember Ashar, that even goes into play with taking their application fee, but they already know they have this eviction notice on their record, so they're not going to get it anyways because they're running their background, and even if it's been on there for like over a year, it never gives a person the opportunity to get into the apartment of a house. So then they're just continuing to run, take their application fee
Right.
with no hope of
And
getting
I
it.
think,
So that's another thing too.
I think that's a challenge that the governor's office had when they did this through the state 2 years ago, is that there was like this much of the bill that ended up being this much of the bill because of those exact same discussions that were had. Because I know we sat in the MML Legislative Committee and we spent 8 hours going over the omnibus housing bill, of which the Renters Bill of Rights was the third leg of it. And I think that's why having these discussions here on a local level, if could produce something, but you also have to weigh what that could do. Could that end up hurting renters more if you do caps or eviction notices or that kind of thing, due to the lack of less rental properties that would become available? I don't know. Tacoma Park is a good one to look at, where, that fear,
I don't think we're going to know that until we have.
you're not going to know it until
discussion
you pass some, exactly.
From
But I
various
think-
sides of the table.
I think you've got 3 case studies that you can look at
Yeah.
that Councilmember Burnett provided, that at least starts that question. And then, like I said, you should, if you'd like, we'll bring people in. I can talk to MML and we can bring people in from down there to talk about it.
Yeah, for me personally, I just can't sit by and just be like, well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It is
And
what it
that's
is,
one
but
of
I
the
mean,
criticisms that you all receive and that we receive as staff is the lack of affordable housing, whether that be, purchased housing or rental housing. And I think starting to have these discussions and getting that out into the open and being transparent about it is a good way to push that narrative, to actually get the facts out there from both entities,
Right.
to try at some point to have a collaboration where, something could end up, like Councilman Alshire said, it could end up in new incentive opportunities. It could end up in, whether that be local or county or state incentives. A lot of those things could happen. But what we can do is we can start generating that information, come back every month and provide you the information, and with the information that you have at that time, decide where do you go next? Are you ready to meet with people? Or is it just going to be too ominous to take on? But let us start generating that information for you and then give you a little bit more informed decision, opportunity to do that.
And that would be great, because again, I wanted consensus from the body before even implementing staff hours and manpower into this initiative, if it wasn't something you want to still pursue. Even though it is a goal, but in this time where, we're really focused on addressing needs, I think it's time to start these discussions.
And we've also got some friends at HUD now that we can get with on the federal side that I think would be more than willing to come talk as well and provide some insight on that too. So,
Well, thank you for my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have the vending machine ordinance, public sidewalks, Amanda Gregg and Paul Falk.
Hello. So, like Michelle said, good evening. Past afternoon, right? So, we're up to evening here. We're bringing back this topic here, the vending machine licensing that was brought back back in May 6th. It was a work session where we were talking about potential options to regulate vending machines that are being placed on the public right-of-ways and basically our public sidewalks in a way to ensure that that we're not, those vending machines being placed are not impeding pedestrian traffic, and then also just ensure for the safety of the pedestrians that we have in our community walking around. We came up with this basically draft ordinance, but being in front of the bodies before, I know that this is just a discussion point. We know that we can have tweaks as we go along the way here, but just give you just a general idea and then see where we might want to make adjustments to it. So with the registration program, we would be looking at restricting vending machines to industrial and commercial zoning districts only. And backtrack just for 1 second. We took the vending machine ordinance and basically mirrored our donation bin ordinance that we have, where we regulate donation bins that can be placed in Hagerstown for clothing materials. Basically, this similar concept, just with vending machines, taking that similar aspect. Right now, we only have 15 donation bins in Hagerstown that are licensed. We have less than 20 vending machines that are on public sidewalks right now. So it's a very similar approach, but for those that weren't familiar with that, donation bins, they were popping up all around town, and they were all sorts of materials, and people were just basically dumping all their materials at these donation bins. So it's kind of like taking that same approach. We want to regulate them, but not put something burdensome in place. So with that being that, like I said, that the vending machines, they'd be limited to the commercial and zoning, commercial industrial zoning districts, and must be an accessory use to the business, meaning that how is it associated with the business? Like, why do you need to have a vending machine with your business? It's on a public sidewalk. Like, why would a clothing apparel have a vending machine on the sidewalk? How is that associated with your business? They got to provide that statement of how it's associated. They'd be prohibited in residential zoning districts unless there was either a non-conforming or conforming business that was already in that residential zoning district. So non-conforming would mean that it no longer could go in that location, but since it's always been there, it would be permitted until it would be vacant for 2 years. So it would continue that use. So it's not prohibiting anyone that currently has one. It would just be regulating ones that do have it. More common example is that you think of Locust Point Market, that down there, they have 3 vending machines that are on their sidewalk down there. It's in a residential zoning district, but that would be considered a non-conforming business, because if they would close and be vacant for a period of time, a new business couldn't go in there that was having a vending machine or something along those lines for that type of use. So it would have to be something conformed to the zoning in that area.
So the
That
new
makes
business
sense.
would not be grandfathered in.
Correct. If it went vacant for 2 years. So if someone jumped right in and took advantage of it, no issues. It would continue on. So it's where it sets vacant for a period of time. Once someone would submit an application to the office, granted the forms of the applications that there would be would, vary on the collection of information, but we'd want a drawing depicting where the vending machine would be going on the sidewalk and then the distances to any impediments. The reason why this idea even came up is because of a vending machine being placed at a residential property, and then that no one that was disabled could actually maneuver around the vending machine and the telephone pole that was in that same location. So it's looking at that and seeing what those distances are. And then also the drawing would depict the size of the vending machine as well, because the ordinance would limit the size. Similar to the donation bins, it's the exact same. Did a lot of research on what size are standard vending machines, and we went just a little bit larger than that for the dimensions. So in case someone would decide to come make something a little bit bigger, if it came an industrial standard, but even the larger vending machines would still conform with the size. As we mentioned back in May, that there is a license requirement in the state of Maryland for vending machines. It is a $2.50 license per vending machine. It's supposed to be licensed with the state. That's all administered through the local circuit courts in each of the counties that they're issued through them. And people just make an application with the circuit court. And then also the health department, like we mentioned before, if it was applicable, they would have to be licensed with the health department. The health department only license vending machines if it gets into prepackaged meals that you could kind of receive from a vending machine. Most of those are in our warehouses right now. They're not really on public sidewalks. They're also very expensive vending machines. So could someone actually have one on our public sidewalk? Sure. They certainly could if they wanted to head down that venture, but most of the time those are inside buildings, but that's when they would need a health department license. Then we would be asking on the application for up-to-date contact information in case it got damaged. This is similar to the donation bins, is that we would just need to know who to contact if we, saw a, vending machine that was damaged on a property. Who do we contact for the maintenance? Because sometimes it could be an agreement with the actual business that's there, although it may be accessory to their use, that someone else is the vending machine operator, not the actual business. So we want to make sure we have that contact information. And then lastly, like we said, it's just a statement on how it's associated with the business for the applications. As we mentioned before, this would be a fee neutral type of thing. We're not looking to charge any fee for this. This is just trying to ensure that when pedestrians are on the sidewalks in Hagerstown, they can safely traverse the sidewalks. They're not having any impediments or any dangers of a vending machine falling. We would just be ensuring that they're in compliance with all of the adopted laws that are basically in the state and locally as well. We would be looking at limiting the number of vending machines. So we don't want to try to have, someone packing a whole bunch of vending machines on a sidewalk. So there are restrictions with that. If it was less than, if you had street frontage of less than 50 feet, it'd be one vending machine. Greater than 50, but less than 100, it'd be two vending machines, and over 100 would be a maximum of three vending machines. So it's not like if you had, 1,000 feet of street frontage, you couldn't have a ton of machines. We'd maximize what it would be as three vending machines on a property. And then one of the last things, as we mentioned with regulations for safety for things, we want to make sure the vending machines are all equipped with either an anti-tip bracket or anti-tip legs, or that they're anchored some sort of way so that we know that it's not going to fall. If anyone walked down a sidewalk, it wouldn't fall on them. And then also need to comply with the currently adopted electrical code. What does that mean, though, for anyone right now? It has to be permanent wiring. You'd be surprised, some people do throw extension cords for these vending machines and stuff there, and the extension cord is not considered a permanent wiring source. That is an extension of the permanent wiring. So that is something we want, a permanent wiring for the vending machines, meaning an outlet that they would have to have. It would have to be GFCI protected because it's outside, meaning it has that test and reset button that we see like in our kitchens and bathrooms. And then also would have to have an in-use cover, meaning that the cord for it would basically close with the cord coming out of it to power the vending machine.
It's a heavy duty cover, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And then also the vending machine couldn't block those ground faults, because if it was tripped, you do not want to move a fully loaded vending machine to try to hit that reset button to reset the power to that vending machine. So basically, that's just like the words kind of go with the detailed descriptions that are in the ordinance. Like I said, open to any ideas on how we want to maybe modify this or move forward with it. Just, let, Amanda and I know your thoughts.
The example you used about Locust Point, they're in a residential neighborhood.
Yes.
So is that stopping anybody else from putting one on?
Right now?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Well, okay.
How are you going to, the ones that are on the street currently, how are you going to notify them to make sure they're in compliance with?
Just like how we done with any other licensing program, a lot of them, like with the hotels most recently, we visited every hotel. Since there's so few of them, we would just be visiting the businesses. It wouldn't take long to do that.
So the ones that are just on the street is what I'm saying. What would you do? Just post a note on the,
No,
like the
we
one
go-
that's down on, which street is that? Is that Locust?
South Locust, there's one.
South Locust, where the resident, that's at the residential property
Right,
line we
so
have
how
that.
would you notify whoever owns that?
Well, I know who owns it, and we would reach out to them that
Okay.
it would be prohibited
But you
at
could
that
also
location.
contact the company that distributes the vending machine also to get that information. Could you do that?
We can do that.
If you don't know, yeah.
Right, right.
What's the intent when you say that it needs to be associated with the business?
So, we want to ensure that the vending machines have some sort of accessory use, meaning like through a zoning purpose, that it's associated with the actual business that's at that location. Right now, that we have, for an example, there's a used appliance store on East Franklin Street that has a vending machine on the sidewalk there.
Okay.
And it's not really, I don't know what the purpose, and that's for the council to make that decision. If you're fine with just any business having any vending machine, we didn't care if it was a service entity that was in that location and put a vending machine on the sidewalk, that's perfectly fine. It was just doing the research and trying to get some sort of, saying that the vending machine had some purpose associated with the business.
I guess for me, that would be a little difficult to argue fairness for, because your convenience store, you close at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, let's say. You say, well, listen, I'm closing at 9 o'clock. And, so I put this vending machine out there because I sell soda. And, I'm closed at 9. Somebody might want a soda after 9, and therefore, that's why it's here. And that sounds fine. But then you go 3 blocks over and there's no convenience store around, right? Somebody over there might want a soda. You know what I mean? That to me just seems.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
I am open to any.
I'm not promoting like kids running around drinking sodas. All I'm saying is like,
Water, juice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't know.
And that's fine. Like I said, it was just throwing out ideas from what we've talked. Yeah, it's a starting point, so we can certainly, look into removing that. It's not a problem.
So Locust Point, let's go back to that again. I am. So Locust Point's in a residential neighborhood, but that is a commercial business. Can we limit that just to commercial businesses all throughout the city? Because I don't know whether that's going to look great having vending machines all out throughout the city in residential neighborhoods.
Well, that's the thing. It would be in residential neighborhoods, we would prohibit vending machines unless it was associated with a non-conforming
Okay.
business, meaning Locust Point would continue to have those, but that across the street at the single-family homes, they couldn't throw up vending machines.
That's what I'm,
Okay.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then he brought up a good point when he said if they were to leave the business and a new business comes in, it's
2
not
years.
grandfathered in, right?
But he's got 2 years.
If-
As long
Within
as
2 years.
It is
Yeah.
grandfathered.
It is
It is
Unless they
grandfathered
stay
in for
close
2
to-
years.
Oh.
Once the 2 years
You
passes,
can apply for
then it was
non-conforming use
vacant.
again.
Yeah, yeah. So it all gets into zoning and how nonconformity works in the city of Hagerstown. If it's a vacant space for 2 years, it loses its use for that particular use. It would have to conform what's approved there. But it could be another commercial business. And as we're saying, like what Councilmember Alshire brought up was that, let's say, rather than it being Locust Point, that it was a clothing store that went in that location, what may be permitted by zoning, they could theoretically have a vending machine there.
I think like retail is reasonable.
Okay.
In other words, if you're a doctor's office, You might not need a soda machine, but if you're a retail, oh, say if you're a retail, like, I would, the look of the retail storefront is generally going to be more commercial looking than a professional office.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
We can look into that, on how to word that is
Yeah.
best.
Retail.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on those?
I mean, like you
proposals?
said, there's not many. So
No.
you're not dealing with a lot, he's not narrowing down 100 of these.
Curious,
But we're-
with the registration, is it
But we're
like yearly
keeping
that they
the
have to update it?
weeds from expanding.
Yes.
Right.
And what was that, Councilman?
The registration, is it yearly that they have to update it? I know there's no fee involved. This is
Correct.
just to keep track on who owns
Correct.
it and, okay, so it is something that they have to do.
Correct, and we would run it the same as we run donation bins. It would be a calendar year. We would just reach out to them.
So nobody requires them to be safety mounted already? I mean, that just seems odd to me.
I cannot find anything in state law that would have it. They just require a license and nothing locally that we have for vending machines to be anchored.
You can buy like a shelf from IKEA without getting, the wall anchors at this point. It's just odd. You got this like 1,000-pound machine, sitting down on the side.
Yes.
So yeah, that needs to happen regardless of what we do.
Okay. All right.
Yep,
We'll
looks
we'll
good.
work on it more with the
Thank you.
attorneys and come back again.
All right, stay here with the next topic, municipal infraction changes, maximum fines.
Okay, so this topic was brought up more recently, just last month, that we talked about where state law had recently changed, where they allowed municipal infractions to go up to $5,000 versus the $1,000 max that it had always been in state law. Probably my notes are here somewhere, but it goes back to the 80s that it was $1,000. And during that discussion, we were trying to figure out what was the best way to implement something along those lines. So an escalating fine schedule was settled on, that we would base things off of offenses, not so much on violations, but the offense. So like we mentioned before, that an offense would be a notice of violation where people could have multiple violations in that one offense. But that the fine amounts, if it got to that threshold, would not increase until there was like a separate notice of violation or a continuation of a open case, but after it's already been heard in court. So sometimes that's several months before something like that would happen. And again, it'd only be when a fine was issued, and we do not administer that many fines. So with taking that into consideration there, the offense levels, it was looking at amending different sections of the city ordinances, one being the property maintenance code, the other one nuisance abatements, which we just talked about last week, and then our 2 vacant structure programs. The program ones that, looking at that one and how it's currently written, it just said what a maximum fine amount was, is basically changing the maximum fine for those particular ordinances, but taking it where it would be based off of a policy that would be approved by the mayor and council. This is a very similar approach that we did with rental housing, where there was a safety standards that were put in place that was based on a policy by the mayor and council. So that policy, if we wanted to change it, if we felt that that wasn't effective, then that's something that the council can take quick action on. It's not an ordinance to kind of change that for a license program. You didn't have to go through all of the wait time periods that's required through an ordinance. So with those, we kind of came up with some amendments, but before I get into that, when working on this, it was one of those things that you see a reference in one of the code sections, and it goes back to chapter 1 of the city code. So nothing that really underneath our department's purview, but is in the city code that chapter 1 currently limits fines at $1,000. Of course, the state has increased it to 5, so we have the authority to change it. So there's also amendments to change in chapter 1 here, because we couldn't have a ordinance that's further down in the code saying the max was $5,000, but yet city code in the legislative section limited to $1,000. So it's amending all of those sections at one time. So with all the attachments here that we provided, what the property maintenance code would potentially look like if we were going through with this fence level. And you'll see the red lines through this, because each code section in the property maintenance code currently has a separate fine amount, and it varies for each different fine, and that has been like that for at least since the 80s that I can research on, but probably goes back even further on those ones as far as this fine amount for these certain particular items. This is more standardized it, so everyone kind of knew where they stood on offense. Basically, it is, as we discussed the last time, was that everything would reset after 2 years if there were no offenses during a 2-year time period, and or if there was an arm's length transfer of real property. So those are ways that they would reset. So people are not always keep on escalating the fines. They would reset if they didn't receive any fines. So the attachment 1 has the property maintenance code. That's basically the first page. The next like 8 are striking through all the different fine amounts that can be very confusing. With those, the attachment 2 was going over the nuisance abatement amendments, and I apologize, the bottom half should have been in red as well, because that's changing those fine amounts. It's basically the same as what's in the property maintenance code that I just mentioned. It's just that it goes with nuisance abatements. And then attachment 3 was what the vacant structure ordinance is, where it basically increased the fine amount. One of those was interesting when I was putting this together, was that we have for commercial structures, the max fine was 1,000, but for residential is 500. That's the whole thing. When you do all these different ordinances, sometimes you can get inconsistent with those fine amounts. So it was basically saying 5,000 for the max on those, but based off the policy that the council would adopt. And the attachment number 4 was the policy itself. To go over that a little bit in detail here. So these would be for, programs that would be administered by our department, and we would do an offense level based on the violation for that particular ordinance. I took this basically almost from our HR policy manuals itself that we have, depending on what disciplinary action that you need to take on individuals, it depends on the offense level. So it's basically like if it was an offense level 1, that would be for registration or license required. An application requirement would be a level 1 offense, would mean it'd be a $500 fine. A level 2 offense would be a notification requirement or an inspection requirement. That would be a $1,000 fine. And then for violating the property maintenance standard, would be a $500 fine. For the vacant structures, that's the ones that they have to maintain it, where they keep the doors kind of free from overgrowth and different other stuff. It takes it a little bit further for crime prevention on a vacant structure. So that's where the property program maintenance standards are. Same steps on those, though, as far as like what would keep it escalating it, and also how you would reset after an escalation for that. So that process is the same. And then lastly, the chapter 1.1, but I'll be honest, Mr. Morton still needs to review this one. One of the things on it that no matter what we do have to update some of this if we want to increase it to 5, or if we want 5,000 or keep it at the 1,000. Maryland law has changed on how they reference citations. So our references of Article 32A do need to be updated to reflect the current Maryland law. No matter if we take action on these other ordinances, we should update Chapter 1 at least to be current with Maryland law. But there's just some minor amendments to Chapter 1, just as far as references to state law. That's pretty much it, and changing the fine amount. So the Chapter 1 amendments didn't include much. It was just referencing the state law change and consistent in it. So again, we are open to any ideas or changes, or if we want to move forward or how we want to do this. I'm open to any discussion here.
I'm good with it. I think it's more consistent. I think it's more consistent with other jurisdictions.
I think this is clear approach to the amendments.
Great.
Everybody good with the offense levels on that? Because I know you wanted to get aggressive with it last time we spoke about this.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We'll probably get it on for next month for
Do September.
introduction for September. Thanks.
Okay, next up, legislative proposals to discuss with our delegation.
All right.
Scott, you want to go ahead?
I'll take the next hour and talk about. No, I'll make this real quick. It's that time of year where legislative priorities are starting to be discussed. The Community Coalition has already met with the with the executive membership, and will be bringing back John Favazza as the lobbyist for the Community Coalition. We'll have our first general stakeholder meeting tomorrow to go over rules of the road, and they will be in. Jim and Paul Fry will probably be in October to have their annual discussion with council and to ensure that the city it will continue to be part of the coalition. As far as our local work with Compass, we were able to get bond financing for the salmon study for the new public safety center. That staff is working with General Services to secure that funding and begin that study. One priority that did not make it in Annapolis that was supported by staff last year was the express consent for annexations having different zoning classifications. Just to give you a reminder on that, in 2006, if the city were to annex property that was contiguous in the county and it had a different zoning classification, a perfect example of that would be the prime outlets. If there was a group wanting to come in right now and change that and buy that area, buy those parcels, and right now it's considered commercial, and they wanted to make it mixed-use residential or wanted to subdivide it into different tracts, that would have to go before the county, and the county would have to provide express approval, which would basically say, yep, that sounds good, we're going to let you do it. Otherwise, what would happen, and the county would say, no, we're not going to allow that. You would have to wait 5 years to annex that property in. What would happen then is the developer would then have a decision to make. Do they want to wait 5 years for that zoning to be able to be changed, to be able to put their development in, or are they just going somewhere else? In the case of prime outlets, they went somewhere else. There was a town center opportunity there that express approval was not going to be provided by the commissioners, and we lost that opportunity. So last year, Delegate Schindler was kind of put on the hot spot with this because I think it was 2 weeks that he got to try to come up to speed with it. We got good traction at MML on this, but it was considered by the legislature to be a local issue. So what we'd like to try to do this year is make it more of a statewide issue. We were able to educate several municipalities on what this means, and we think we could get some additional traction and make it a statewide bill and get some progress moved on it. So that's one from last time to consider. Other subject areas for you all to consider is in the list there, making the Hagerstown Fieldhouse exempt from all personal and real property taxes for both the city and the county. That would be a local delegation bill, similar to what was done with Meredith Park this past legislative session. The relocation and expansion of community gardens, providing funding that would allow for incentives to establish community gardens in various parts of the city, regardless of zoning. That would also be a local delegation bill out of the gate, but could also become something that could morph into a statewide bill. Requiring certification and registration of sober houses in Maryland, that would be a statewide bill. Did not go, was discussed in committee, did not make it out from what I remember. The same would be requiring certification and registration of property management companies in Maryland. Public identification of principals and LLC filings for business licenses. Right now, that is not a requirement. You do not know who are the principals in various LLCs. That where we find that most troubling is during tax sale, and they come in and scarf up, they warehouse these tax sale properties. And then when we try to find out who they are, we can't find out who they are because there is nowhere to get their names. This was tried last year and did not make it out of committee. So that would be another thing that the delegation would have to work, and Delegate Schindler could help us work on. Making Washington County a shall county related to tax differential. This is going to be part of the MML priorities that this, along with several other revenue enhancer, even though this will not be a revenue enhancer opportunity for the municipality, it would certainly be an opportunity to understand better the tax differential strategy of the county as it relates to all municipalities, and require them to come to the table and provide that information to us. As you're probably well aware, that is not a requirement now, and we have not had that discussion in the 20 years I've been, well, since 2008 when tax set-off changed to a tax differential. Another, and we just threw that, I just threw this in there after the discussion last week. You can take it for what you want, but a bond bill for relocation, either through acquisition or rehab of a current structure for the Washington County Historical Society into a downtown space. That would also be considered a local delegation bill. Again, you can look through these, you can add what you want. You can take these suggestions and use any of them or none of them, or all of them. But then also it would be great if you have any personally that you have that you'd like to bring to the table. That would be greatly encouraged to do that. And then we can research and run that down ourselves through the Legislative Services Department at the General Assembly, usually through Delegate Schindler or Senator Quarterman. We can do that. Okay. I just to add MML, we'll be looking for support from the city on its strategic initiative, and there's only really one this year that has some components, and that would be to increase the ability for municipalities to raise revenue, in addition to personal and real property taxes, which is pretty much the only way we can do it now. This would be through the institution of an admissions and amusement tax on all food and beverage sales, whether that be at a stadium or a restaurant or any place that sells food and beverage. There would be an additional A&A tax that would revert back to the municipality. And then the establishment of all counties to be shall counties in regard to tax differential. Those will be discussed at the fall conference and will be voted on by the board of directors and then presented to the general membership at fall conference in Deep Creek. Delegate Schindler and Senator Quarterman will be here in September. I believe it is Donna, the 9th, to sit down and go over some of these and discuss, what their thoughts are on them. And it would also be an opportunity for you all to address them directly as to what you'd like to see coming up in the 2026 legislative session. So that'll be on September 9th. Not asking for you to do anything here, just bring those to the meeting on September 9th, and then we can formulate those either through the coalition. I would like to suggest to you that one of our community coalition asks be the tax exemption for the Hagerstown Fieldhouse. That would be the one that pops off right out the gate with me, but that can also be part of the discussion for the 9th, because we won't have to have anything submitted until into September. Any questions for me?
No, but reminder, I will not be present on the September 9th meeting, but just want to let you know that I agree to this list. And also thank you for adding local delegation and statewide bill throughout. That's helpful to digest. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay.
All right.
City Administrator.
Just one thing, the Latin Fest is this weekend in University Plaza. It's on Saturday. I believe it's 10 to 8, maybe, in University Plaza. It's buried under here, I'm sorry. No way, here it is. 10 to 7, free admission, University Plaza, Latin Fest. Food, entertainment, Sounds like a very good time. I think we had this last year, and it turned out to be a very fun event. So look forward to doing that. Music and markets tomorrow night. Vinyl Fever is the band. Food truck is Cousin's Maine Lobster. So that could be interesting to get down. Drinks is always by Hub City Brewing, Church Street Distillery, Encounter City Park is also Wednesday. Fertile Soil is performing, and Sunday Farmers Market at Hub City Brewing. That's it for me.
Councilwoman Burnett.
So I just want to start by apologizing to you guys, colleagues, and those watching. Right before the meeting, I got a call dealing with some family matters and totally blanked with my presentation. I was so prepared, so energized and ready to go. It was not my best work, but if I was not clear, my apologies. Elected officials are human. I'm having a superhuman moment. So if my delivery was off, I apologize.
We got you though.
Okay. I was ready. I was so ready, but I'm just not,
We know what you're doing.
it didn't go as planned. But on another note, Washington County Public Schools is starting on Monday. So I just want to wish the students and educators and staff and parents a great and safe year. Thank you.
Councilman Asher. Councilwoman Bell.
The only thing I would want to see if we could either bring back or just know what's going on with the properties that went to, I guess, went to court. I don't know.
For tax data?
Yeah.
You're gonna get that.
Okay, great. That's it.
Just waiting on the legalese to
Gotcha.
get solid. Amanda heard that.
Councilwoman Anderson.
Nothing for me tonight, Mayor.
I had the opportunity to go out to Antietam Brewery on Saturday for a car show to benefit Officer Langley Dean. It was a wonderful night, or wonderful day. There was a hot dog eating contest that I was just on Saturday.
No, did you win?
Oh, no, I was asked to do it, but I had a dinner to go to at 6 o'clock, and there was no way at 2 o'clock in the afternoon I was going to eat a bunch of hot dogs. But that was really entertaining. That winner ate 11 hot dogs in 10 minutes. And I was just sitting there watching him struggle, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't get into this. But Jamie Lawrence with One Room Media covered the event, and he did a great job.
We should have entered Wes Decker.
We should have.
He's our resident hot dog eater.
Yeah. And Ryan Smetzer did a fantastic job emceeing this thing. He always does a great job, and he was so entertaining on getting the crowd pumped up for this hot dog eating contest. It was just entertaining to watch that. But they ended up raising over $1,300 for him, and I thought it was just a great event. And that's it for me. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion about any items? Okay, we're adjourned.
Well, I turned it down because Tierra was,
Don't ever use
blood
me
pressure
as
was
the
up.
temperature.
Blood pressure was up.
Without control.
So right now, on auction, early auction,
Oh, yeah.
says Hagerstown City Hall. All I'm saying is I think that there's a key